Thank you so much for joining
Hi.
today. And without any further ado, I would like to share my screen and please let me know if you all can see my screen and then
Yes,
I'll
we
go
can.
from there. Thank you so much again. And so today I'm presenting, as you know, the stream of learning and development for best training experience. And I will be talking about what is training, why it's needed, what training delivers, and how to offer the best training experience. My global experiences in business management and research, working in higher education, and also working as a leadership trainer and a coach, uh, made me a biggest advocate for learning and development. I always work for in the area of learning and development and try to offer the best ROI, return of investment, for my employer. So I would, with that, I would request all of you to drop few words about training, your understanding what training is and how it adds value to your life, to your employer, or to your day to your learning journey. So anything, whatever comes to your mind, whatever understanding you want to share with me, uh, you all can share in the chat box. And I'll come back to those questions in the chat box or the sharing in the chat box later. Let's move on with this training. So as we are talking about scope of training, the scope of training is huge because it all depends on different organization, but on in a nutshell, uh, training fills the gap of knowledge, gap of skills, and gap of ability. And also, when talking about ability, I'm also talking about innovations. So, as we know that we live in a world of technology where that technology is changing on a rapid pace, so the need for filling the gap of ability in terms of dealing with the technological innovations is becomes very important. So there is a key matrix, knowledge, skills, and ability matrix application when we are talking about training. Training has two components. One, either you can train yourself or you are training your organization. When you are training yourself, training delivers personal growth, right? How? It offers new knowledge. It gives you a new skills and it enhance your ability to do the work or the job you are doing. But when we are talking about training your organization, we are talking about uh, training builds the functional competencies of the organization. And how it builds, it overcomes organizational and workplace deficiency in terms of knowledge. So it's filling the knowledge gap, developing workforce, upskilling or reskilling the workforce, investment in organizational success by keeping up to the mark in the market, being relevant in the market by developing those capacities and ability among their workforce. And that's how training add the value to the organizations. So, uh, you know, it's a very simple scenario. Suppose you are onboarded a flight and you are given two options. Uh, there are two different pilots. One is perfectly fully trained and one is not trained. What options you will choose? So, you know, still the flight is on the ground, right? But there is no upfront cost of choosing either one of them. But still, you nobody wants to train to fly with the untrained pilot, right? And that's the value training adds to the organization to tackle, to give that confidence, knowledge, ability, and skill to handle the situation in a most effective and professional way and delivering the outcome which is optimal and ideal for that particular situation. This is how the training works in the workplace as well. So training helps to build a trust. It delivers trust. It also delivers a confidence both at the workforce level and at the organizational level, and it offers the results to the organization that what you are trying to achieve, we are able to train our workforce and get those outcomes in a most optimal way of improve in terms of improvement, or in terms of different outcomes we are looking out of those particular training pieces. So that's other part, and that takes me to my next slide. Sorry, uh, but training has cost. Training takes time. Training also takes has to have a budget or financial resources, and also the training material, the content of the training it has to be updated and aligned with the outcome we are looking out of that particular training. So training has a cost for time, money, and material. That's what I call. Mm, then how we start the training, how why we need a training, how to get started. Get so the intent for any training is to uh, understand what gaps you see in your organization, what gaps you still exist on a particular team which you want to train, or any other platform, or different in a process innovation you are launching and you see a gap, and how you are going to fill that. So the intent of the training need to be defined, and then what are the desired outcome of that training, need to be uh, highlighted with a lot of clarity and understanding, and you have to also buy in the support from the leadership, so the training remains successful for the team. So the other part of the training is to objective should be crisp, right? The objective has to deliver on that gaps or the problem statement we are solving through that particular training. Then it has to be enclosed with verb, because the verb gives you the action items, how you are going to actionize those resources or those scope in terms of creating those trainings, and the outcome need to be has to be tangible. So what kind of a difference? That's where the ROI of the training comes into the picture. The budget you get for the learning and development need to be the value add to the organization, not the overhead. So that tangible outcome help us to buy give the data to the leadership, to the organization, that what kind of a outcome you got out of that training, and how it's a value add, either in terms of upskilling, or in terms of sales, or in terms of product development. It all depends on what kind of a training you are delivering and it has to be some kind of a tangibility attached to it. So with that, I'll take a bit of pause to to look at the chat, and thank you all for dropping your nuggets here. To have a tool in our professional world to do our lack of efficiency, that's correct. That's for the what uh, that's what training is, to have a tools in our professional world to do our task efficiently. That's great for the training. Varnika says, I believe there is two types of training: post experience training and refresh training to kickstart our career. Yes, that's kind of a baseline for training is always either you are fresh, or you are learning new skills, or you are experienced, and then you are upskilling yourself to remain relevant in the marketplace, or relevant for your employer. That's also very very true. uh, then I have a question in the chat box I would like to take right now: how to access the need of for the trainee. So the first thing is to understand the strategic vision of the organization, how which direction the organization is moving, and then understanding what kind of a workforce or a team you have on your side to deliver those outcomes. And that gives you a perspective of seeing the big picture, and that gives you a perspective of where you are right now and which direction you are headed. And when you have those clarity, how you can bridge those gaps which you see that you are lacking in terms of the strategic goals you are trying to achieve or the organization is trying to achieve. So that is a need assessment is very important, and also creating a a competency map is one of the other tool which many organization uses to find the needs of the training, and that's how they know that what kind of a training is needed for their workforce. So I hope I have answered that question, and let's move on to the next slide, and I will take the rest of the questions later in the presentation. So other part of the model you everybody has to keep in mind while you are even designing any kind of a training. So your you analyze your audience readiness and experience. That is the first three cues where you have to ask who is my audience, what are the level of their readiness, and what experience they bring to the table. Once you have those questions mapped out and answered, then you get to understand that how that analysis will help you to design your training. So when you are designing, you have to weigh your uh, options for delivery, activities, and length. So delivery, it has to be in person or a hybrid, or it's going to be a remote setting. It all depends on the needs of the training. What are the activities going to reinforce or bring more clarity to the training, and how long the training should take place. It can be a 1 day training, 2 days training, or it's going to be a 6 months training. It all depends on what kind of a skill development we are designing for the organization. Then once you you are done with your designing, then you have to develop the materials, virtual aids, facilitator guide, job aids, handouts, presentation deck, playbook, training guides, etc., etc. It all depends on how much in depth we are going into a particular training. Then the most important part is the implementation. What are the strategies for implementing those trainings? What are the logistics and operational support you need? And what are the whether those objectives, the training objectives, are aligned during the implementation process? And once everything, the training is delivered, then you evaluate the results, whether it delivered on the goals, and what impact it bring to the team. What changes is those behavioral changes or upskilling has aligned with the strategic goal of the organization. So that's the very, very key important aspect of any training, is to see the results, align it with the whether, and evaluate it in terms of how whether it's delivered on the goals, and what impacts it created in the team, or it created for the workforce. And then, I particularly love this slide because it gives you a huge understanding of operations. Many times, we have a world-class material, facilitators, but there are a lot of moving pieces during when we are supporting any kind of a training, and there we need to keep eye on design and development, right? We have to not only design the training, we also have to design the delivery. Designing and developing the calendar, communication plan, and training materials is very important. It's very, very important for organizations who are working in the tech industry, or very innovative in nature, or a creative industry. Collaboration remains very important. Thus, SMEs, vendors, stakeholders, and management need to come together to deliver a single piece of training successfully, and that which is more effective for the workforce, right? Otherwise, in the lack of collaboration, doesn't deliver the outcome the way it has to, that the way it has intended. So it's very, very important for us to collaborate in an effective way and remain connected. Then as an organization, we also monitor as a learning and development professional, learning management system, registration, communication channels, training equipments, classrooms. And I particularly love the change part, because every time there is new situation or new challenges or new risk, you identify. So you have to create that kind of a design that is resilient and has a capability to tackle the change. So for me, a change is something which it come from the sometimes it comes from the leadership, sometimes it just pops in due to a certain circumstances. So creating that system of managing and monitoring everything, including change, remains important. Then you evaluate training quality, feedback, surveys, employee experience, engagement, and those are the data vantage points where you collect all these data, and then you reflect upon those data to create insights for the future trainings or future learning experiences. Uh, mm, I have, before I go to the next slide, I think I have another question. Uh, how can effective training be delivered in a hybrid environment? That's a good question, because, effective training is always people centric. The workforce, whomsoever you are training, the audience of your training need to be engaged, and the training has to bring some value to the audience, to the trainees. That's how they became, it stimulates learning in them. So either they are going to use it in their day-to-day roles and responsibility, or it's gonna upskill them, getting ready for the succession planning or any kind of a career growth, professional growth the organization is targeting for. So the effective training has to be people centric, workforce centric, and it has to deliver the value for both the organization as well as for the employee. That's how the effectiveness of the training can be measured in a hybrid environment. Especially engagement and collaboration remains the key for a hybrid environment. Any kind of a changes or behavioral changes or skill changes we are targeting through the training, it has to be some kind of a forum, or you can have a different channels, what you have learned, how you are going to reinforce the learning, how you are bringing those insights. Those are very, very important things in the hybrid situation. uh, so uh, Mm. So training compares to that's a good question, that the training compares, does this training compares to the other available learning resources? So when we are talking about the learning resources are self-paced. Sometimes, due to our n number of responsibilities, it's not always easy to go back to the learning resources and upskill ourselves. Training is kind of a putting you giving you a fixed time to focus on or your upskilling or new learnings. And that's the difference. When once that reinforcement happens, and when there is a stimulation of interest and knowledge with the training, either in a hybrid or in classroom situation, then it becomes easy to utilize the learning resources or do research and find what learning resources are useful for you, rather than just depending on the employee to self pay to the self pays or asynchronous learning about to upskill themselves. So this is how the training becomes important, that it gives focused time for employee to understand, and also it gives a perspective to them that employers care for them, and they are investing time, money, and resources to upskill them, to support their them in their role sets, so that uh, brings the best outcome. uh, it's a great question. uh, uh, Okay, and I think I have more questions, but let's go forward and then I will try to take it, if time permits, we'll take it in the end. So, what I want to share as my final words, training fuels on mindset, right? It gives you a perspective of learning, even though if you are professional, you are very good in your craft or in your skill, it's still the rapid changes we are going through in the corporate world or elsewhere is very important to remain relevant in the workplace, remain relevant in the community we live in. So it also not only it helps you to become better version of yourself. uh, mm, it's kind of an input versus output. The more efforts you put in, the more perks you get out of it. It also needs time, money, and material versus knowledge, skills, and ability. What I say that the more you invest, the more knowledge, skills, and ability and adaptability you develop for your organization. um, and uh, re re-emphasizing and revisiting training pieces are very important, because once and done is not going to deliver the learning objective in a most effective way. So unless the behavior change or the upskilling it happens, it's very important for the organization to give an opportunity and resources for their workforce to revisit their trainings, to learn and become better on whatever trainings they are part of, and how their learning can impact. So the most important thing for training should be functional. It has to deliver on some kind of an outcome for the organization, but it has to be interesting, engaging, and enjoyable for each one of them, uh, so the outcome can be tangible. So those are the important aspect of any training, which I think in given time slot of 15 minutes or 20 minutes I can cover. And I am going to take one last question from, is the training focus on evergreen skills or does it address short-term goals? Because I have an instance where we receive a participant certification training but does not really add much the value towards the learning. Uh, so, it all depends on what kind of and I agree that many times it happens that you do a certification, you do not learn anything, or it's not even relevant for your role, whatever you are performing right now. So it's very important to understand that what kind of a resources need to be given to you based on the role sets you are performing right now, and how to keep yourself engaged. Sometimes evergreen skills are, maybe, for example, somebody is practicing SharePoint, right? Is that's the evergreen skill, because most of the organizations, Fortune 500 companies, uses those resources and platforms. But if you are if if you are like a very specific working on some technology, like somebody who is working on Jira, and and they have a new job, and the other organization is not using Jira, then those trainings might not work. So they have to upskill themselves again to remain relevant for their role sets. So where maybe he or she has the Jira certification, which not be applicable in their current role. So those things happens. That's why the training becomes very important to understand the knowledge your workforce need to do the job they are doing more effectively and more efficiently. Hopefully I answered your question, and thank you so much for joining. Before we I appreciate all of you to join me today. But before we leave and conclude this session, uh, I would like to understand what are some of the key takeaways from this session, which you guys want to share in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and talk to me directly as well.
I did write. Thank you. It was a great training. I understood that this is great work, that if we want to do a training in an organization, we can understand the training needs and design and delivery method depending upon where our audiences are and how to create those tools which can be used for, as you mentioned, it could be for everlasting or it could be something which is tangible just for that moment. So that was very useful. Thank you.
Thank you so much for uh, sharing that. Anything else? Uh, any last comment or anything? Any last question? And then I would try to include that. Otherwise, thank you so much, everyone, for joining me today, and appreciate your time. And hopefully, you got some value out of this session. And for see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.